Hey everyone, welcome. We're so glad to see you today. My name is Gabi Conacher. I am the co-founder of Deep Connections, which is hosting today's webinar with our partners at CACNA1A Foundation. And today we're going to be talking about high-tech solutions for communication for complex learners. And this is part of the series that we're doing with our partners at CACNA1A on therapies. So we're super excited to be here today. And quick notes that we are recording today's session. It will be up on both our website and CACNA1A's website in the next few days for ongoing viewing. All of our participants are currently muted and off camera, but we really welcome you throughout to have some chat going on in the chat room. If something resonates with you or it brings up a question for you, please do use the chat as a place to talk with the community and with Amanda if you have specific questions. Amanda's going to be following along, and we will save time at the end for structured Q&A. And in the meantime, as you're streaming in and listening, feel free to drop into the chat where you're joining from and what brought you here today. In the interest of time, I'm going to keep it short and sweet. I'm going to hand it over to Lisa, our partner from CACNA1A, who is going to introduce the speaker today.
Thanks, Gabi. Thank you, everybody. It's really exciting to see you here for our second presentation with Amanda Luddeke, who is a speech and language pathologist who has practiced in pediatrics for the past 20 plus years in a variety of settings ranging from school to early childhood. Amanda now owns and works as the lead speech pathologist at Building Kids Steps, a private outpatient pediatric rehabilitation clinic in Victoria, Texas. Among Amanda's many passions is working with children with complex communication needs. And when she's not at the clinic, she's a wife and a mom to 3 amazing children. So I think we'll just kick it right off. Before Amanda speaks, I just want to make a plug for all of our other webinars, and a big thank you to Teresa Spong, who is a CACNA1A, the grandma, they call her Gigi, the Gigi to a little CACNA1A girl, and she's a physical therapist and organized this whole series for us. And so Amanda is one of her colleagues, and we're so grateful to Teresa for all her hard work and to Amanda for being here today. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be here. This is like one of my favorite topics. And so I'm going to try not to be long-winded as much as I can be. And I want to just kind of start today with saying, every speech therapist is going to come at this from a different angle, right? And I don't know that there's really just one particular way to do this or one particular vocabulary set. Obviously, there's not one device out there. But what I do want you to understand is that building a vocabulary system is far more important than the actual technology itself. All right. So whether or not you use the same products I use, I was schooled in a certain way, and I have philosophies about why I choose the products that I choose. And your speech therapist has reasons why she chooses what she chooses. But at the end of the day, our goal is functional communication, and our systems should have functional communication on them. So just keep that in mind as you're going along. It's always my goal to have a kid who can have a conversation with me, not label stuff or have one word utterances. So I'm always at that thought process. This is also kind of a complex topic to talk about because it's a whole bunch of different pieces that come together and they play together. And so I say that because sometimes I don't know if you put the egg before the chicken or the chicken before the egg. And this is kind of how I put it together for you today. But please feel free to put in questions, ask questions. This is my actual staff, and this is my lovely family down here, and I thought I would share them with you. This is the most recent staff picture that we have taken, and it's a combination of OTs, PTs, and speech people and front office people that really just make our world work together. And we are all about the whole child at Building Kid Steps. Here's a little recap about from last time. And I think this quote sums it all up. A little progress every day leads to big results, right? This is a slow process. This is not a magic wand. If it was, everybody would do it and it would work great. We have to celebrate the little things along the way, but it's, and I know Teresa has talked about this, it's daily work. It's every day, the same thing over and over. And sometimes it's like on the 100th time, and sometimes it's on the 5th try. So we have to be willing to keep moving. But a recap from last time, the goal is to help the child communicate at all costs for the following reasons: to protest, request, engage in social activities, and to answer questions, to share information, share their day, share their feelings. And they kind of go in that order, right? We have to be able to protest before we can request, and we have to be able to request before we engage socially, and we have to be able to engage socially before we share information. But ultimately, these are the things that we're working toward. So a good assessment matters, right? And we talked about 2 assessments last time, globally looking at from the communication standpoint, how your child communicates and what they communicate, when they communicate, why they communicate. And this is actually a communication matrix that was filled in, right? So the gray stands for we've surpassed this level. And remember, this is pre-intentional behavior, intentional behavior, and then unconventional communication, and then conventional. And then 5, 6, and 7 is that combination of concrete and abstract making language at 7. And so if it's in the orange here, that's a mastered level on this kid. So it looks like this kid is starting to use some single word utterances in some form or fashion that's considered abstract, right? That's kind of what this is telling me, and that he doesn't so much have a whole lot of concrete. That's okay. We really like when you're putting abstract language together. And down here, we've got some emergence into what looks like to be some 2-word phrases. So that yellow at the bottom, that's emerging. Orange is masters. This kid is starting to fill in those pieces for basic language. That's kind of a good subset of what this child is looking at. And then we have the every move counts. This is just kind of a picture of their 2 books that they put out. I encourage a family to get one and look at it. I think these are great tools for us, and every move counts looks at those more complex kids who have lots of motor difficulties and differences that prevent them from moving and accessing their environment in a way that we would consider typical, right? So now we're going to break down things we know they love, and we're going to use these guidelines to help determine those loves and what we can do to get access to those loves. So these are kind of the 2 assessments that we use a lot here to make some good determinations about what a kid can and can't do, and how they let us know what they want. And then the last one I've added to the bottom here is called the SET framework. If you're not familiar with it, if you're not familiar, I'll go to this page in a second. If you're not familiar with the SET framework, it's by, it was put together by Joy Zavala. It's more of an AT assessment, a global AT assessment. And it looks at really more from a school perspective, the tools and communication and access that a child needs to be able to participate in school. It's a great assessment, and it's not something that you click a box on. It's something that a team sits down and talks about. So as we're moving into, we've established this from a communication side. Now let's see how we're going to get this kid to do this in a variety of environments. That's what we're looking for. And I have another slide that talks a little bit more about SET, but that's another great assessment that looks at the team, and it lets everybody provide information. And it gives us a really great place to go to develop an academic profile, if you will, of how we're going to help this child excel. And I don't think that means the child who's capable of learning on first and second grade. No, we should be looking at these across all environments for our complex kids, especially those that we have no idea exactly where they are, that are really involved, that have cortical visual impairment, hearing impairment, motor deficits, communication deficits. Why? Because a great AT assessment grows and moves with you. And we have to adopt the idea that whatever we've decided works today, it may not work 5 months from now, but we should have grown, or things have changed and we have to come back and assess. So an AT assessment is not a one-time assessment. It's not something that we do every 3 years. A good AT assessment, which is assistive technology and AAC, augmentative and alternative communication, is part of AT. They're not synonyms. AAC goes with AT. But this is a growing, working document. And we have to be willing to take what we originally look at, and when things are starting to change and evolve, we need to add to what that allows this child to do. And when they fall apart, we need to go back to that drawing board, because let's face it, sometimes our kids get bigger, but they don't necessarily get stronger. And they can do less motor than they could 3 months ago because they had a 2-inch growth spurt. That doesn't mean the child's regressed. That means they've changed. And we have to be willing to adopt that change. So the goals of AAC are twofold. Say what you want to say or communicate, and do it quickly and efficiently. When I'm a child who has complex needs and I've used behaviors, even if it takes a while for everybody to figure out what I need, that doesn't necessarily mean that I don't consider it efficient. Adult efficiency and child efficiency, not the same thing. And if it's the best that I can do, then unless somebody supports me differently, that's what I'm going to go to. In terms of AAC, as we're trying to move from unconventional, right? Those behaviors that are socially not considered acceptable, hitting, biting, pulling, scratching, tapping incessantly, screaming, whatever that looks like, that's not necessarily considered socially acceptable, into a conventional mode with some form of abstract language attached to it. So that's words, picture exchange, sign, written word, those things. Our goal is spontaneous novel utterance generation, SNUG. I'm hoping that's not a new term to you, but if it is, basically what it means is I say what I want to say when I want to say it. I create my own language. For some people, that's one-word utterances, and sometimes that's the best that we can hope for. But it doesn't mean we're not pushing the envelope for more. And for others, it's not grammatically correct sentences, it's holistic phrases, right? Like go out, swing. All right, go out, swing. If you came up to me and told me that, I would probably assume that you want to go outside and swing. That's not, I want to go outside and swing. That may not be where we are, but the message is good. So we have to remember to pick the battles and move through the steps. So if we're at no words, one word is more than the no words. And we got to move from the one word to the 2 words, but it may not be the whole sentence. And that's okay. The goal is growth, not perfection, because really that's unattainable. So, and it's not just unattainable for a child with complex needs, it's unattainable for all of us. So we shouldn't hold them to a standard that we don't hold ourselves to. Okay, so here's a set framework. I have my slides out of order. I'm gonna hopefully jump and hopefully it'll take me there. I do have it as a link. It's loading. Give it just a second. Okay, this is a link to that. So this is what SET stands for: student, environment, tasks, and tools. And what we're looking at is the student as a whole, right? We're going to consider assistive technology, and we're going to look at the student as a whole and what they have, what they do. And we're going to also look at all the environments that they're going to be in within their day. Okay, so our goal is access to what a typical child would be to the greatest extent possible. And we're going to take a look at what our kid can do. We're going to take a look at the environments that they're in. We're going to talk about what they can do that's good in that environment, what they really struggle with in that environment. And then we're going to look at the tasks they're required to do, right? So if they're required to color within that environment, how do we help that happen? And then we're going to look at the tools that we need to get those goals achieved, right? So whatever that looks like. And maybe that is that the child can't color with a pen. Let's say they're going to art class. Well, what do we do in art? Okay, so what adaptive equipment do we need? But we're also going to at the same time look at what communication do they need? How do they get the things that they want? How do they tell us that they are all done? How do they request the items? How do they get something new? So we're going to look at all of those pieces. Now I realize this may not be where all of the children are, but I do want to kind of touch on a little bit of everybody's kids. But the same thing for those classrooms that are more self-contained, right? I would hope that your child is exposed to something that looks like a normal school day that has a little bit of these things going on. If they're more of a homeward bound child, because obviously there's a lot of medically fragile children out there, do we bring these activities in? And if the answer is yes, maybe this is an appropriate framework to say, okay, so when the teacher comes in, how do they access these activities? What are we asking them to do? How are we asking them to participate? And hopefully we're asking them to do a little bit. I'm going to show you some different videos today that will hopefully show that in a new light. But this framework here kind of helps have these guiding principles. Okay. Hold on one second. Because I have somehow got notes at the bottom. I'm having technological difficulties. Let me stop my share and see what happens. I am sorry, I am struggling just a tad bit.
No worries.
But I just about got it fixed. I have just about got it fixed. Okay. Here I am. Okay. I apologize. I don't really know what I did. All right. And then it did exactly what I tried to keep it from doing. Okay. So guess what? I'm not sure how many of you guys have been told that there's a prerequisite for AAC, for using AAC. So here's some things that I've heard parents tell me before. You have to be able to see, you have to be able to hear, you have to be able to touch, reach, you have to already have words, you have to be able to sit and listen, and you have to be able to point to pictures. You have to have some sort of symbolic representation. And I wrote, and if you want to share with me some of the things that you've actually heard, I don't know that I would be surprised, but guess what? None of that's true. It's not true. There's no prerequisite to AAC. There is some good guiding principles, but to be able to try AAC in general, no, there's no prerequisite. We just start. And hopefully we start at the level that the child is at, and we build on top of that. But while there are no prerequisites for AAC, to grow language, you do have to have that cognition that we talked about to support it. You have to have the cognition to understand that something can represent an idea or a thought, right? So up until we get to that 12-month stage, that unconventional behaviors are there and those children are learning. But until we can really start to put together the understanding that when I say cookie, I'm talking about this. it makes it really hard to grow language. And I don't look at language like as being verbal, because I know lots of verbal kids that are not functional. And that is a sign of some lack of cognition there. They're struggling with the pieces. So I have kids who walk around telling me, see the sky's blue, the dinosaur's big, he says roar. And I say, what do you want to eat? And he goes, and the dinosaur stomps. Okay, we're not having a conversation. And while you're putting a whole bunch of words together, and I do think that you understand what you're talking about right there, our ability to interact and share that information, that's a struggle. And that's kind of a sign of a lack of putting all the pieces together. So we want to remember that there are no prerequisites. We do have to start, and you're never going to get anywhere if you don't start pushing through those areas. But at the same time, to grow language into 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 word phrases requires some understanding of how to build those pieces together. Once again, it's our job to teach it, but the groundwork has to kind of be there. And I say that because sometimes we have to be low tech before we can be high tech. And I'm a firm believer, if I think it's capability, we'll just jump off and be high tech. I don't want to teach anything twice. But at the same time, we have to have some understanding that what we're saying has meaning and it's purposeful. So we need to be able to understand both concrete and abstract. And we referred to this a little bit, but concrete is something that represents an idea easily, right? A picture of an apple represents an apple. A shoelace is for a shoe. And abstract is something that represents something that cannot be readily guessed, such as trying to depict a word like want, which is not easily depicted, right? How do you draw the picture of want? How do you draw the picture of go specifically, where everybody universally understands that? Those are abstract ideas and concepts. Or like if you use a shoe to indicate the meaning for go for a walk versus using a shoe to indicate the meaning for the actual item itself, right? So there are no prerequisites for AAC. And obviously I've had many kids who I'm like, this is going to be a struggle, blow my socks off and just be way better at it than I ever anticipated. And that's great. I feel free to show me up. It makes me want to celebrate it even more. And that's why I never say never. But what if we're not sure, right? What if right now we just don't know where the cognition is? What do we do? Okay, first and foremost, we got to go back to where we were talking last time, right? Establish and use those routines to help build anticipation. It's kind of important. We got to have that piece. So if you don't know, if your child doesn't have a lot of motoric abilities, if you are the person that's kind of moving them through space and place because they can't, then the way that we try to lay those groundwork is to do activities that we seem to think they enjoy by using the every move counts. And then we say, okay, this is the symbol for this. And within this, I'm going to model some other vocabulary, and I'm going to give you these opportunities to tell me what this is going to look like. You want to establish a reason for communicating. This is beyond the most important thing. If you take nothing else away from this, what your child's vocabulary is very specific to them. And it is not what they are teaching in school. That is irrelevant. And there's no 2-year-old walking around talking about letters, shapes, numbers, and colors unless that is something that they like. So when we're building vocabulary, it's about what the child wants to talk about. Otherwise, why are we communicating? First of all, that child may be with you more often than they are with anybody else, but I'm a stranger coming in. And I don't like to talk to people that I don't really know as an adult. So why would I spend time talking to someone who only wants to talk about what they want to talk about? I wouldn't. So I can't expect a kid to want to spend time with me if my vocabulary selection is read a book and you hate reading books. It has nothing to do with that. It has everything to do with, what do you want to talk about? What do you like to do? And then we have to be smart about the vocabulary that goes with that situation. And then we need to find some other activities that look exactly the same and put the same core words in there. We want to establish cause and effect within preferred activities. If we're not sure that they have it, then we got to teach it. We want to impose the symbol system on them, whether it's an object or tactile, picture system or a sign system, low tech or high tech means. I'm going to show you a little video. The precursor to this video is, first and foremost, a little history about this girl. She does not have a seizure disorder. She was exposed to drugs and not having prenatal care. So she's both got a visual impairment. She's not totally blind, but she is deaf. She does have a cochlear implant, but it has never worked super well. Okay, so we're not functioning very high. This is not what I consider a communication system. However, what we did was, because we didn't have great cause and effect, but she loved the bike. So we took a Go Talk in 2 different colors. I had a yellow one, or actually not a Go Talk, a Big Mac switch. If you don't know what a Big Mac is, I don't have one actually sitting here, but I will show you. Sorry, that's another toy. Okay, so Big Mac switch is a recording device. It's about this big. I had a yellow one and a red one. And she liked to go. So all we did, we're just establishing that, like, this is how you get to be able to ride the bike, right? That's it. So more cause and effect than it is language, but I'm just tying the word to it in hopes that we can achieve the understanding that when I want to do something, I'm going to do something besides get off the bike, cry, or push on something. All right. So let me show you this little video here. Hold on one second. Okay, I think this is it. So let me see. Tell me, go. Tell me. Tearing up the baseball.
We never have fun night later.
Go, Lily.
Played with it yesterday. We did.
We won, Lily. Lily, we won.
Mhm.
Go, go.
I know she can't hear it, but what I do.
Okay. Now let me see. Hold on, I'm getting the bags. Okay. Were y'all able to see that and hear that?
Yeah, that was great.
Okay. So really, it's the beginning stages. Okay. Up until this point, she hasn't been able to learn to touch pictures, right? But it's how we start. And yes, I took her hand and I laid it on there. 2 weeks after we started this, she reached up no matter where we had the yellow switch, turned it on herself. The point is, we want her to be able to do something. So I can scale that now, right? I've got this big yellow button. I can start to put a picture on it, and for her, she had some visual impairment, so something tactile. She could see the big yellow switch, but I could put something tactile that I associate with Go, that I can start to make a more complex system, right? But the other piece to that is, we're going to take that big yellow switch and it's not going to just be for bike riding. We're going to put you in the swing and it's going to be for Go. We're going to put you in on the spinning board, and that's going to be for Go. And we're going to start exploring these other activities that have a sensory piece to it, because we know she likes it, and help her to start to understand that Go means move. All right. And then from there, I can start to add some fringe vocabulary, maybe a tactile piece to that bike, maybe a tactile piece to the swing, and a tactile piece to the spinning board, something that feels very similar, right? If that's what she needs, and if she's not going to be able to expand that vocabulary. And up until this point, I mean, so she's older, right? we haven't been able to establish much more than this basic cause and effect. So I'm not thinking in the back of my head at this point, a huge symbol system. I'm thinking we've only found like 10 things she really likes. So I'm going to offer her the word go, and it's going to look or feel like something. And maybe we can shape it to just being a yellow square. And then 3 or 4 things that go with go that she can choose, right? Because then that becomes a 2-word utterance for us. Go swing, go bike. Now she can choose. Lily, what do you want? And I have my little board there that says, these are the options. And I can take her hand and be like, see, this is this, this is this, this is this. Okay, great. You love the bike. I know you love the bike. I'm going to hope that that's where we're going. It's bike. Great. Let's get on the bike. Now tell me go. When you're wanting to get off, we're going to impose stop. So that's eventually what we did. We had a yellow button for go, a red button for stop, and we started to use that as it's time to get off. Like we're telling you it's time to get off, and build that system that way. Super sophisticated? No. More than what she had? Yes. And that's the goal. All right. So how do we choose vocabulary? Kind of just went into that. We're going to have a combination. And my rule of thumb is always more core, less French. So core words are the approximately 80% of what we use. They come across a multiple set of contexts. I can use them in a wide variety. Like I have a list of like 45 words that I'm like, every communication system should have. Why? I am the modeler of the communication system, and I have to be able to talk to you. And if you are at 0 words, we're going to start at 1. But when you're at 1, I'm at 2. So I'm modeling constantly. I'm going to show you some of that here in a minute, so that you can see what I'm doing. And if you can't see, you can hear what I'm doing. And if you can't hear, then we have to kind of figure out how we get that tactile piece in there. But ultimately, if I'm not using your system, guess who is also not using your system? You. You didn't learn to talk by nobody talking to you. So I know that's a hard concept, but the truth of the matter is, if you're going to adopt an AAC system for your child, then you can't go home at the end of your day and put the system away and say that's what they worked on in school. It'll never fly. And eventually they won't be in school. So we have to be the users of the system. It has to be somewhere. It has to be present. Everybody in that home should have a pretty good idea. If you're going to sign, and I have some kids that sign, I'm not a great signer, but I'm a good enough signer to make it through what we have to accomplish here. Then I sign and talk to my kid if he's signing back to me. And hopefully we are getting some verbal approximations with that if that's at all possible. But if my kid is using a device, I am talking on the device. And if they're territorial about their device, then I just go get my iPad that has that layout on it, and I talk on mine. But I'm not talking verbally, and they are talking to me with their device because they'll never learn it. So if I ask them a question, it's on the device. It's an expansion of what we want to say. It's commenting. If I hand you something and you give me a face, I say, yuck, that's gross. And I model that so that you know you can comment, because how else would you know? The other piece is the fringe words. And that's usually nouns, and they're situational, and they only make up like 20% of what we use. So first and foremost, fringe words rarely get us things that we need. If you say cookie, I have no idea what you're talking about. You saw one, you want one, you have a book about one, you hate them. I have no idea. I need a core word. Go, stop, help, want, more, on, off, open, close, push. We need those words. We need those words. So I try very hard to make sure that my vocabulary system is robust, and it starts with just that. Once again, the child's interest, not my interests. Goals that say the child is going to learn the following 3 words. I have cause for concern for that, because how do you know that those are the 3 words the child should learn versus the child will improve their vocabulary by 3 core words Great. Every day we come in, you can pick a new core word if that's what you need to do. But usually eat, drink, sleep, rest, break, help, play, music, or not music, but sing, watch. I bet I can find something that your child likes with those. Go. There's enough action in there that we can have a bazillion activities and use those words. You have to remember, it's not an academic tool. It's a communication mode. And we shouldn't be trying to force academic language down our kids' throats when they don't have language to begin with, because 1, 2, 3, and 4-year-olds developmentally aren't learning academic language. They're learning the art of communication. That's where our kids are. Doesn't mean we don't have to expose them to them in the classroom. I'm not saying that. But if a teacher comes to me and says, I need a list of these 15 science words on the kid's device, no. Because the next time they say Mars or Venus is wind. Get a core board, get a board for your room and add that to this system if that's what you need. But we don't need those words on our device to be a communication tool. That's my point to that. Sorry for my soapbox. Okay, so there's lots of types of AAC. Oh, sorry. Lots of types of AAC. Some systems are unaided, so vocalizations, body movements, facial expressions, natural gestures, Makaton, and sign language. Those are all unaided systems. I don't need anything to do them. Aided systems, real objects, object symbols, electronics, computers, PECs, pictures, written words. Those are all systems that need a tool, right? They need a tool. Low tech, sign, photos, picture exchange, choice making, and object symbols. Basically, low tech means you don't need batteries, or you only need like AA batteries. You don't need to charge this device. And high tech is electronic devices, voice output, and then computers. And so the AAC world has a lot of moving parts in it, obviously, but most of us use more than one mode of communication every day. So if you have a high-tech system that has mostly core words on it, you can just for circle time. That's not impossible. I have lots of kids who navigate between those. I also have lots of kids who, as they start to move through AAC, start to become more verbal. And they'll do awa and then say cookie on their device. Why? Because they now have figured out how to say I want, and awa is a pretty good approximation. And mostly, isn't that our goal, that our kids would verbally speak to us? So we want to help them honor that and shape that if it's shapeable. My rule of thumb for verbal and AAC voice output device users is that if they're terribly unintelligible, within therapy itself, we try to shape verbal speech kind of in its own time and continue to encourage device use in the other time. Because if you walked out into the community and we've let you lose your communication device as a form of communication, and we really can't understand you outside of highly familiar users and a joint referent, we're not really helping you achieve language or an effective communication system. So my rule of thumb is I really do need to be able to understand you. And so we would want that to sound a little bit more like I want. And then if you couldn't say cookie, or that turned into because you're just not great at that motor plan, you would need to use that word on your device. There's different ways to represent language: single meaning pictures, alphabet systems, and semantic compaction. And I've put this little slide on here, or this little link on here, which gives a great depiction of each. I'm a big fan of semantic compaction, which is using a single meaning picture to stand for lots of things. It is within the Unity symbol system or Unity language system that was developed by Baker and is part of the PRE-REQUISITES group. And I do like it because it really allows me to teach language. I know it is not a love for lots of people. Usually single meaning pictures create page-based systems, and page-based systems are more along the vocabulary from Toby Dynavox, Sonaflex, Proloquo Go. They have changed a lot of their stuff and they are creating more core boards, but they're still only using single meaning pictures. Because we're short on time, I won't go into this unless we like finish some of the stuff I want to share, but that link gives a really good explanation for the different systems. Obviously, an alphabet system, you've got to be a reader to use an alphabet system, but it's unlimited what you can say with an alphabet system. Okay, so high tech versus low tech. Here's a pretty good continuum. What you saw me use with Lily is a low tech system. It's not even a system, it's just a voice output. But single message communicator is what it is. There are sequential message communicators. I consider these more for participation than I do consider them communication devices. However, sometimes participation and cause and effect is what we're going for. And sometimes it's just the place to start. And with Lily, it was a place to start. Then you can move up into the simple level generating. Those are Go Talks, Tech Talks. This is my thought about that. And I kind of have it written here on the site. I almost always shoot for the stars and try for the more sophisticated system after establishing cause and effect. So once I have cause and effect by the different toys that we play with and different stuff like that, kind of what you saw me, I don't know if you're on from last time with our friend Joseph, we're going to look at him again here in a minute. Just getting something and knowing purposefully you're going to turn it on or off. Once we've established that, I almost always kind of shoot for high tech. And my reason why is I don't necessarily want to teach something twice. It's already hard for you. So if I think we're going to be able to high tech it, I just start with high tech and we water down the systems, then we beef them back up. But that being said, I'm not a big proponent for Tech Talks and Go Talks, but I do have some kids. That's where they are. That's where they cognitively are. The thing about those is you have to change those pages out yourself. And obviously now on the iPad, there is like the Go Talk and some more simple deals where you can connect pages and they rotate through. But when you have to hand change out the levels from core words to fringe words, that's cumbersome. And it delays the communication path for the child. So more often than not, if I'm using a Go Talk, I have a core board set up with my core vocabulary words, and we just use a felt board and pull pictures off for fringe vocabulary. And once you kind of get that, once again, I just sort of jump to high tech. And really, that's more, I guess, of a starting point for me for a kid who has a direct select ability. We'll talk about that. But here's an example of kind of the continuum. All right, so how do I choose? First and foremost, pick it and stick with it. This is not going to be a like tomorrow thing. You have to kind of like push the envelope. You're shaping the behavior into something more, and you've got to be consistent. And not just you. Everybody in your house has to be consistent with this. If we're shaping the requesting of snack at school, at home, at therapy, I would hope that you're shaping the requesting for snack at your house with those preferred items, and that I've showed you how to do that, and that you take that home and you do that so that the child starts to understand that what they're currently doing is no longer how they get snack. Also, I fully understand as a mom that some days is just not possible. So I do understand that this is very difficult. And I am very empathetic to the plight that you find yourself in. And so I also know that it can't be an all the time thing. So what I like to tell my parents is pick one, because here's the thing. If your child learns to do the snack right after school, then when you go to do the drink at supper time, they've already established that this is something that's possible. One, and then two, hopefully it generalizes a little faster. So first get it in one spot, then add another spot when that gets to be better. And that may take 5 weeks, it may take 10 weeks. But once you see that, oh, we're making the connection, then add one more. Don't go home and add 50 and be like, I'm going to do this, because we all know that life gets in the way and that's not possible. So don't set yourself up to not be able to accomplish it. Do it in little small increments. That's how everything we do gets better. It's kind of like exercising. The first like 4 weeks of exercising are miserable. Then you're sad when you miss out on that. It's kind of the same way. Establish a routine and a behavior, but don't cold turkey it. It's not possible, and no one can commit to that. All right, fostering language. You must model on the device. If you don't, your child will never learn to use it. We're going to follow the child's lead. Take the communication device when you are communicating with them and them with you. Take it with you. Don't, if it breaks, it's fixable. It's technology. We break stuff all the time. It doesn't matter that it costs $7,000. Just use it. If you put it in the backpack and you never take it out, guess what will never happen? We'll never have a communicator, and it'll never break, but you'll also never use it. So use it. Don't fall into the trap. Well, at home, it's just easier to, or at PE, it might get broke. You have to use it all day, every day. You have to. And I know the establishment of routines, yes, it is just easier, but we don't make them more independent than we just make them only fairly independent in this one place. To learn a modality, you have to immerse yourself in it. You just do. Teach core words. These are important to be able to communicate in 2-word utterances. We have to have them. And you have to shape your child's previous communication methods into something more functional. I love this. Presume some competence. That's why I shoot for the stars. I'm just going to assume you can until you tell me you can't. I've seen some amazing things by presuming a competence. Provide opportunities. Use the right AAC tools. If it's not working, think about why it might not be working and then try to adapt. Teach, connect, and explore. That's what you have to do. And you have to allow time. No child learned to put 4 words together the first day they started talking. It takes time. And just think about that typical child. It takes a long time for them too. It's not a week, it's years. From when they say their first words at 9 to 12 months till they're like good at it, which is like about 3.5. That's a good span of time. So don't fall into that trap of this is impossible. I have seen people learn to use AAC devices when they were 50. And they never had it before then. It's not impossible. Access and tools, and that's kind of our thing, right? We have these more complex kids. So first and foremost, direct selection is using your finger to select on a device by touching, right? Whether it's a key guard or however it is, but you use your fingers. You can use a stylus, but basically you have the ability. And I have some kids who can fist. So I've done some amazing things with chewy tubes and some foil tape to make a child be able to palmar grasp or grasp the top of a T of a chewy tube to make a stylus that doesn't look like a pen. So there are ways to adapt that stuff. Scanning, 1 step, it moves across with the timer. I'm going to show you video of this. So I know I'm rushing, but I am going to show you video. And then 2-step, 2-step requires more cognition than 1-step. But I try to shoot for 2-step because 2-step is faster. So basically you set up 2 switches, 1 switch moves the cursor, the other switch selects the cursor. Auditory versus visual scanning. Okay, so kind of the same thing, but here's the thing. Auditory scanning, and that's what you're going to witness today. I almost always leave my kids originally on auditory scanning, and the reason why is because I want them to be able to hear, especially if I am unaware of their visual skills. And the majority of the kids that come that see me who are motorically involved, guess what? Cortical visual impairment. And so we just play that game. But essentially, if you become an efficient user, auditory would only play in your ear with an earpiece. I wouldn't hear it. But in the beginning, we just let everybody hear it so that everybody knows. Eye gaze. We're going to look at a guy who's starting on eye gaze. He did not have a cortical visual impairment diagnosis. I questioned his vision like all along, but you'll see like a short clip of me moving from switch scanning to visual tracking. And then tools that I love and have in my world. One is a power link, which is this guy right here. And when you plug something into him, you can make, it has to have an actual plug. You can set and make things run for a specific amount of time set up with the switch. And I is one of my great tools for figuring out cause and effect. This is a large button switch. And this is, hold on. Sorry, that's all my stuff on. This is a small button switch, and I'm hoping you can see this. When you touch it, it turns it on. The thing is that requires quite a bit of hand strength. And I know it probably doesn't seem like it, but more than some. So I have a small plate switch here that I use a lot that's on a slant. See if you see it, it looks like this. And it almost requires like anything can activate that. Just the barely faintest touch can activate something. It works the same. You plug it in, you turn it on. These are called flat switches. Right here, this is a PAL pad switch. It's totally flat. So if you have a kid who loves to stim on the noise, and you can't really tell if they're just playing with the noise or they're actually purposefully trying to turn something on, a flat switch doesn't require a lot, and just putting pressure on that causes the same thing to happen. You can turn something on. And for this guy, he plays his whole song, so he's probably not the greatest to show that, but when you let go, it turns off. But he plays his whole song. And let me see. Oh, okay. So these right here are little finger switches. This is here. Okay. So they require minimal. The great thing is a finger switch doesn't require a finger. I mean, I can wink my eye. The same kind of for all of these. And then probably like my faves are the Bluetooth switches where I don't have to have any wires. I do love those. My current Bluetooth switch has got some sort of glitch with it, but the other one that I love is what's called a proximity switch. And that's what you're gonna see in the videos today. And basically, if you're in close proximity, it kicks in. And this is a lot what they have in wheelchairs. So if I have a kid who's motorically involved and I can get something up there, I know that if you have a power chair, I can accommodate and adapt the head ray to flip over into communication mode. They usually have a fourth mode for an auxiliary jack. And then I don't have to reteach you anything, which is, always the goal. Don't have to reteach. So those are kind of, and I'm sure that the chairs now are a little bit more sophisticated as well and have some Bluetooth. I don't currently have a kid who has that, so I haven't had to play with that technology just yet. Okay, so now let me show you these videos that I have here that I want to share with you. Okay, so first thing I want to show you is some importance of modeling. Okay, so you're going to watch, I think you're going to watch me model and then you're going to see him do something is what I'm hoping I have set up.
Okay, here we go. I'm gonna hold your head. 1, 2. Now wait. Good. And then wait. Good job. Okay, now we're gonna go row 2 and a step to play. Ready?
Activity row 2.
Now wait. Now step.
Can, play, stop.
We're gonna come around. Come on.
Can, play,
Now wait.
play.
Okay, hold on. We in a bad spot here. Hold on. Because you're dinging. Yes, we are gonna play. Hold on. But you're dinging off my switch. Yeah.
Okay, so a couple of things about that. Hold on a second. First and foremost, he's learning, right? So I'm giving him lots of tactile cues. He's actually single step scanning, and that is long and cumbersome because you have to have it timed. But he's also an athetoid CP kid, so he's in a writhing state of motion. And so what you have to know is a lot of this is, sometimes it's a day-to-day thing, but trying to figure out all the little right pieces is always important. And so he fully understands me, has terrible motor pattern issues, but he looks at me and he can confirm a lot of things. It's kind of why I like to show these videos, but we do a lot of, hey, this is where it is. And you notice how I told him, we're going to do this, and then we're going to do this. He had a consistent yes and no as well. But I want him to be successful. And I want him to tell me what he wants to tell me as well. But at the same time, when we're first learning, this is how this happens. You have to do X and then you have to do Y. Okay, so this is kind of the next piece to that.
You,
Now step it across. 1.
1, go. Go.
You got it. All right, here we go. Wait, you gotta hook it up. It's not hooked up. But I think you can see. Can you see? You can shake your head yes, no. Can you see? Look, I made these bumpers. Or Miss Lori made these bumpers because Miss Lori loves you, and you should never forget that. Get on the switch. It's not that funny. You're gonna run me out of battery. It's not funny. Okay. Oh, he's still not on. See, look. Look right here. Up, 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 up. Ready, watch. Go back. Prepositions.
On.
On. Get off the switch. Go. Drive it. Really? That's the first place you go? Get on.
Okay. And I obviously like to have a good time and kid with my kids. So, but I modeled back on for him because the device was off and he had originally said go. But everything that we're teaching is always going to be tied to something sort of fun, right? So no, I'm not spending my day teaching him colors right now because right now I want him to be invested. And obviously he was laying on the switch on that side specifically because he wanted it to go and he knew that was what was going to happen. I've got a few more for you. Okay, so okay, here's another
We're gonna
great.
step them
Oh,
through.
I didn't put back on my share. I'm sorry. Okay.
We're gonna step them through. And it's always great if you start and say things like,
1. Music disco doll.
I mean, it works real well like that. I'll take whatever I can get. Okay. Here we go, handsome. Which one do you want?
That he was on the other
I
one.
think it was on the other one. Beat is beeping at us.
And I show that one because you saw how I told him this is something you can say. And while it's not exactly what he may say, it is something to say. And then kind of my last one here as we round out is
Well, if you get to play and you can tell me what you want.
all right, so just a little bit. He's now, okay, our same friend that was stepping through, all right? We've kept the vocabulary exactly the same. But he's now using eye gaze. Okay, now one, I'm not certain about his eyes, but we know that this would be less cumbersome if he didn't have like a bazillion switches mixed up and he didn't have to do that. He doesn't currently have a power chair, so that's a lot of equipment to have, right? So this is like me trying to help him figure out eye gaze, which he has very minimal ability at this point to do. This is brand new.
Oh, that's a get. What do you want me to get for you? All your stuff is in here. You gotta move your eyes and look at this box. I know, not your head, your eyes. I know. Let's back you up just a second. Let's finish. There we go. You gotta look up at play. I know, not your body, just your eyes. Just your eyes, just your eyes. Here's the question. There you go. You were on it. Ah, you looking at the bottom of the screen. That's you. This is you. You got to put it up here. I'll tell you what. I'll even get you here. Now, you got to get up there. What are we going to do? Like, I would love to do the dolphins or the bubbles. Yep, go get them. Oh, so close. Get them, get them. I'll come up, not your body, just your eyes.
Eyes over here.
Eyes. Don't look at Miss Lori.
Okay, and this is hard, right? I mean, it is hard, and we're trying to honor all that we see him do for a reason, because we know it's hard. We don't want him to struggle, but there's no way to get there if we don't struggle just a little bit. And yes, I'm kind of holding his head, and I'm trying to help him motorically figure out what to do. That's not everybody's way to do it. It just seems to kind of work for us, and it's difficult. It's new. And we have to figure out how we're going to get him to not move his body and just move his eyes. So what he's trying to do is raise his body and not move his eyes. And hopefully we can get him there. I will show you this one little last video. We'll kind of end on it for today. And then I will certainly entertain any questions that you have. This is probably one of my favorite things. We helped him. I will say something else about him. He was athetoid CP. And you can see in some of the videos where I have his arms with little weights on him. They weren't super heavy weights. They helped him have control of his body. And after about 6 weeks of kind of doing that, he was able to kind of figure out a motor plan, keeping them down without having them. But when we did not weight his arms and his legs, we had a space like kind of like a rubber band that he could keep his legs behind. He couldn't stop moving his body to use a communication device. And so your motor people are super big in this. We needed them to help us, and really we co-treated PT and OT with him for a long time, trying to figure all this out so that he could. But here's a little video. We switch adapted. So we switch adapted this Nerf gun here to a timer, and he would turn it on, and then we would shoot for so long. And this was like the biggest kick. And so this is actually, that's him turning it on.
Sebastian, did you see us? We got one whole point.
As time went on, we tried to rig up for him a a thing to hold the gun. So it became more him and less us. But those were the things that got them. And that was the vocabulary that we built. And that's kind of all that I have for today. I hope I touched on some things that help you guys to build that vocabulary system at home. And let me see here what we have for questions. Okay, so the first question is kind of our education team doesn't really do these kinds of assessments. Okay. Assistive technology, at least in the state that I'm at, is part of the IEP program and should always be considered. And so if you have a child who has lots of things going on, cortical visual impairment, motoric impairments, has cerebral palsy, has communication issues or concerns, every person who does an assessment should consider AT, and there should be an AT specialist. And if there's not, I would possibly ask for an outside independent evaluation. They might be hard. I know they're hard to come by, but it doesn't mean that you shouldn't ask. And yes, they should be integrated into your IEP. What they shouldn't say is my child is going to use the Accent 800. Why? Because really under the special education law, what it says is that we have to provide something comparable. I'm a firm believer that the kid should have one device and that device should move around. That way, if we're changing vocabulary and adding vocabulary as the child grows, we don't have to add vocabulary to 4 systems. That's ridiculous. And it's complicated. And what if you didn't get that word and that's the word the kid wants to use for the day? But they should be written in what they should have. And so if they have auditory impairments or VI impairments, yes, whatever we're using to create these things, that should be in our IEP, what they need. And then, okay. The other question is that the child has a system and the school has never really trained the parent on how to use it. I would call a meeting, but the other thing is if you have a system and hopefully the child is getting to take it back and forth at home, on the back of most devices is like a 1-800 number. And my thought is call them. There is lots of support out there. There's lots of AAC websites, Practical AAC. It's like PRAAC, Practical AAC. They have great goals and they have great videos. And most, like at least I know Toby Dynavox, the people who make Proloquo to Go, PRC people, they all have support and free online trainings and tools to use. So like I said, I'm primarily a PRC user, and they have the AAC language lab or the language lab as part of their deal, which has activities, carryover activities, ways to put things out there. Even if you like subscribe to Boom Learning Cards and you type in AAC, there's lots of little adaptable books that have the vocabulary and different stuff. So I encourage you to check those things out. I know, and I think the other thing is I keep hearing she's just not ready. I never told what ready means. Now you know, they don't have to be ready. You just have to start. And the places that we started with the assessments, and if the school's not doing them, it's not that you can't do the 2 that we talked about last time at home. They're doable assessments in the home. I dropped all that stuff on the floor. The Every Move Counts has a parent one and it's great. And let me see. Apparently I missed a question, but you yourself just at home can adapt these things. Sometimes when we don't know, you know, I think Lily's a great example, right? And even these guys, y'all saw Joseph last time. He was the little boy that I was modeling on. When he came to me, his mom's like, other than smiling, sometimes we have no idea. And the truth is there was a lot there, but we started with toys and just being able to turn on cause and effect toys on his own with switches and things that he brightened and smiled with. And then we built vocabulary around that. And guess what we started with? On and stop. And I modeled stop and he told me on. And when he turned away and acted like he didn't want to do that anymore, then we helped him say stop. And we just played this game over and over and over again.
So we can feed to you too. So in the Q&A, Toby was
Yes.
asking if motor and cognition abilities are different, meaning her motor limits her vocabulary significantly. Is Unity/LAMP something to consider? We use touch chat with 25 grid right now.
Okay, so
And just to add another piece, she said, we were all set to get an eye gaze, but we worked on direct select with her while waiting. And once we got the device, she refused to use it.
so okay. I think there's multiple questions in there, so let me see if I can touch and then she can put back in there. Okay, first of all, Unity PRC has a scanning layout called Core Blast, and that is what we use, and I love it. And it's a little bit easier to navigate into stuff, and it's set up. I don't know if my device will come on. Let me see if I got enough battery. I can like show you kind of the layout that we have set up for a little friend of mine. But it's called Core Blast. And so they have other layout users. They have other layout users that if you just got PRC to help you with, I think you might be super excited with what they have. Now, let me make sure I understand the other half of the question, which is that y'all worked on direct select. And then as a result of direct select, she no longer wants to use her eye gaze. Am I a yes on that?
Toby, I'm gonna unmute you if you want to chime in.
And this is what Core Blast looks like. It's
Okay,
not
yeah,
the
can you
full-
guys, can you
Yes,
hear
we
me?
can hear
Oh,
you.
can you hold it up again? Because I was switching to
Okay,
unmute
sorry.
myself.
It looks like this. It's obviously the watered down
Okay.
version, but it looks like this, and they have a much.
Yeah, I
It
see
starts
that.
with like 6 grids, and then you can expand and expand.
Mhm.
But yes.
Yeah, like so we trialed all the access methods that you listed, settled on eye gaze. In the meantime, it was taking really long to get her device, so we would just continue to work on direct select. And then and she got better at it. And then by the time the eye gaze device came, she absolutely refused to use it. Like she wouldn't look at it. She would squeeze her eyes shut and turn away. So we just finally asked her, do you want to use your eyes to talk? And she said no. So we went back to the iPad, and what we're just running into now is I feel like she understands that she could say more than just like 1 or 2 things, or like 1 or 2 words, but her hand-eye coordination and the motor piece is limiting her so much that she is just really, really frustrated. We did try going up so the navigation with the touch chat wouldn't be as many buttons, but it's just too small of buttons for her to activate. So we're just kind of struggling with her because she's reading sight words and stuff like that. So
what kept you from sticking with the Unity?
with the eye gaze,
No, what kept you from sticking
we've never
with the Unity pieces?
we've never tried it.
Oh,
That's
okay.
like I've looked at it and I've brought it up. Her SLPs are not familiar with it.
Yes.
And the other piece is just like when I've looked at it, I've noticed that the buttons on there are small, and it looks like you like black them out and then just add as she gets better, but I worry about the size of the buttons she would just, that would be hard for her. So I didn't know if there was like a setup with bigger buttons or how
So yes,
that works.
but not on the iPad. So if you
Okay.
actually get a device, they can go down to 45 or 60 without actually limiting too much of the vocabulary. They just have more within the semantic compaction. And this is something I think that every parent should hear. It does not matter what the button is. It does not matter what the picture is. It does not matter. Why? Because when you learned Apple, it didn't matter that that's what Apple sounded like. You just did that. For so many of us adults, we get caught up in well, that doesn't make any sense to me. If you tell your child that she has to touch the shoe and then the swing button to be able to swing, and that's her favorite thing to do, she doesn't care what she has to touch. She will learn the motor pattern for it and be able to do it. That's the one thing I can say about PRC and semantic compaction is it is totally motor planning based. So for kids who struggle with motor plans, it is consistent motor plans without moving the core page around and it being specific. And what I mean by that is it's built totally around core words, and under like Apple is everything associated with using your mouth and eating. So inside Apple is the verb eat and bite and chew, and then all of the French vocabulary that goes with eating, like your foods. So you only have to figure out that if you hit the apple, that's everything that goes with food and eating. And that button never changes or moves. It's always on the home screen at the same place. Now, if you're at a 45 button versus an 84 button location, yes, some stuff is shrunk down and in a different location, but for the person on the 45 button location, it's the same. And so, yes, then you can have bigger buttons, and they do make key guards. And the great thing about, I think, their stuff is that you're not deleting a button, you're hiding a button. So I can be wide open, or I can be watered down. My 84 location vocabulary system can be 2 buttons and everything is hidden, but all I'm doing is opening them up. Yes, I can add a button systematically in the section where it belongs, but by and large, it's never gonna move. You're not deleting a button and adding. And on page-based systems, the button's either there or it's deleted. It's not hidden. At least that's been my experience. I know people are changing stuff. They don't spend a lot of time, so I don't want to talk out of turn. But for the touch chat, I would say trying a key guard. If they can key guard that and it be that could help you guys. The other thing is I would just talk to her about, it seems like she's pretty bright. She's figured that part out. If you don't want to be frustrated, you may want to try your eyes again. I can't choose it for you, and whatever you choose is perfectly fine. But if you want to tell me more, seems to me that it's easier to use your eyes. And sometimes personal choices get us places and then we can go back and revisit them. And I can say this, I've had kids that I was like, I think you are capable of a device. And we put a device in front of them and they do everything but look at the machine. Fine, I'll do something else. I'll do sign, I'll do picture exchange. I'm not going to force you to do what you don't want to do. But it seems kind of interesting to me that I can take them a step back and 7 or 8 months later, pull that back out. And because we've established those beginning pieces, we're back there and they'll just gravitate toward it. So I don't ever say like jump and abandon the ship, but maybe you walk away for a while and you come back. I don't know if I answered your questions, but it's kind of my—
Yeah, no, that it's just hard because they don't have like if we want to try eye gaze again with her, we have to get one from they don't own one or whatever. And then just whenever I brought up, because I've gone to the Unity and the lamp and looked at it several times, and I bring it up and kind of get a deer in the headlight look, but maybe I can just be like, maybe you should just call and we should just try it, because she's not wanting to do anything else anyways. So she definitely is smart enough to know how to work us a little bit. So It's just hard because she gets frustrated with the navigation of the touch chat. Like she knows if like if she wants to switch her show, instead of like going through the whole I want to watch whatever, she goes to group watch, you know. And so they're talking about her like forming sentences and stuff like that, but she's not interested in that piece of it. So it's hard for me. It's just hard because I know she has things to say and I just want her to be able to say them.
So I think something you can try at home, just at home while she's there, right? Okay, so for these guys that have significant motor challenges, and it sounds like she has some, this is not easy, it's hard, it's fatiguing, and it wears us out. So we can't get worn out building the sentence, I want blah, 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 all the time. But there are times when it's important, right? Like if you say, Encanto, what about it? Now you have to work harder, right? Because I'm just gonna play dumb. But if we're in a place where watch Encanto gets my message, why would I take someone, even if I believe that that's their capability, and force them down a path that takes 15 minutes to say something? If I'm a smart person, I'll just opt out. If it's just not that motivating, I'm not gonna do it. We have to honor that it's hard. And I'm not saying that we don't want her to use sentences, but I am saying there has to be a balance. Maybe that's something we work on with simple reading books for short periods of time. Maybe that's a time when we're like, look, we're only going to read books with eye gaze, right? So we want to like kind of tweak this stuff a little bit and realize that you may not have access. But borrow device is a capability of a lot of these places. So I say, if you want to navigate it on your own, navigate it and see what you get. I've had kids come to me on cumbersome page-based systems where all they had were pre-stored phrases. Like they could say, I need to go to the bathroom, I want something to eat, and it was all pre-stored. And we just played the advocate of core-based system versus page-based system. And I've had 3 kids independently swap, kind of like in your situation, because it was less, but it was more efficient and they could say more. And so they won out on their own. But we didn't take their system away. We just said, hey, when we're in the gym, this is the vocabulary system we're going to use for this amount of time. And on their own, they swapped because the other system didn't allow them to say what they wanted to say. And the navigation of sliding through a page-based system with endless amounts of vocabulary in an alphabetical order, because swing is on the 9th page, is cumbersome. And that's not everybody's place, but if you have a child who has a robust language system and you have to go through 5 pages to say one word, no, you're not going to do that. You're not going to waste that time. So we have to look and honor physical ability with situation, and say, okay, in these situations, this is where you're required to do a sentence. But really, if I said, hey, what color do you want? Jenny, 5-year-old, they don't say, I want the red color, please. They say red, please. Or the red one. That's what they say. So why should we make them do more than what we'd ask someone else to do that's the same age than them? That's ridiculous. We're not trying to say you have to be at the top of your game. You just have to be communicative. We should honor that. And hopefully as they get older on their own, as they want to have more complex conversations with their peers, they'll do that on their own. They'll just do it.
Yeah, Amanda, that's great advice. And sorry, Toby, I muted you back because I heard some feedback. I don't know if that was my computer or anything, but I think that's really brought up some really interesting points and important points about how to follow your child, right? To follow their lead. I know we're way over, but we had one more question that I thought might be interesting to go into as well, is that if people are having trouble getting, sorry, I didn't put my computer, my thing back, but if people are having trouble getting the access to therapists or teachers that will actually take the time and dig into this, what do you suggest people do? Do they say, I mean, I heard you say get an independent eval,
Yeah.
right? But what are the things that families can demand in IEP meetings to say, you're not sufficiently helping my child here, because unfortunately there are not enough Amandas out there, right? So
I think the avocation is important, but there shouldn't be anything that should prevent anyone from having an AT evaluation. Like, there's not. I mean, it's one thing if you're a direct selector and you walk around and the only thing we're worried about is whether or not you can transport this from point A to B. And let's face it, I've got those kids, and there's probably those kids with CACNA1A. I mean, I'm assuming that there are, because there's such a wide variety. But then there's the people like my friends here, and my friends deserve to have AT addressed. And we're already partially addressing it. I mean, let's not be honest here. If you're in a wheelchair and you've had a PT eval and you needed adaptive equipment, that's part of the AT assessment. So I don't think that, to my knowledge, under special ed law, you can say, no, we've already met your needs if we haven't actually looked at the need.
right. Well, I think that's part of the issue that came up earlier about the assessment somebody was talking about. I mean, I've talked to parents before who say, they say, oh, that's not an education assessment. That's not assessment that we do for education around AT, because we've already assessed that they are eligible for services, but they're not looking at how do you actually appropriately work with a child. So I think sometimes what I hear from families that they're running up against is that the school systems are not, even if they do say, okay, well, we'll do an AT assessment and here's a device, right? Now you need somebody to work with you. Like there was a comment about there's like 1,000 kids on this one AT's, role for a school system. So, beyond doing a school system and say you need to get,
honestly, I think that my personal opinion is that's unfortunate that she has that caseload or he has that caseload. That's not your problem. Because ultimately the goal is free and appropriate public education. The last time I checked, that was the goal. And if they don't know, they are required to find out. They are required to do something. I think if you go to the ASHA website, American Speech and Hearing Association, you can look up people who actually do specialize in devices. And I'm going to be the first to say, does every child get a device? No, not every child does, but every child deserves the right to communicate at what is their best level. They deserve that right. And that looks different for every kid. And we just have to be willing to say that. Have I had kids that have come in and at the end of the day, they were not device users, no matter how hard we tried? Yes. Yes, I have. I think Lily is a prime example of that. It's probably not where she's going. I realize I'm not in charge of that, but we've done a whole bunch of stuff and that's where we've ended up. That doesn't mean that when she's sitting in a classroom, she deserves to have no communication system. No, she should have a list of preferred activities that when it's downtime, she gets to choose. And then we should be working within that system of whatever that looks like. If we are having circle time, why is it that she can't have something that's cause and effect to say something? Why can she not be a participator? As far as I know, she can be if we're smart about it. Does that take a little extra time? Absolutely. That's the classroom you're in. That's why there's not supposed to be 30 in there. But I think trying to find maybe an outside independent consultant who can help you walk through those pieces may be the best. If you can't find someone to play on that team at the school as to what are we looking at. And I think ASHA does have a list of people who actually choose augmentative and alternative communication as their specialty. And it's a very wide and broad field. Obviously, I love the things that I love, and you could go to someone down the street and they could do it just as well as me and not use the same products. These just happen to be the things that I have found to work and be effective for me and the people that I had schooling me. That's how they taught me. So please don't think because I didn't talk about your device today or talk about something that you use that you have chosen wrong, or this is not the right path for your child. That's not true. If you are successful, don't stop, just keep going.
Yeah, no, I think that's good advice. And we'll definitely put that ASHA website up for folks, and try to include the links that you had in your presentation as well for people to go and check those out. So anything from you, Sunita? I think we'll
I
probably
just wanted to, yeah, thank you so much, Amanda. I really appreciated your perspective and how child-centered you are in your approach to this work. And so thank you so much for spending your time with us today. And I think we got so much great feedback from the last webinar, and I know a lot of people will take a lot of great tips from you this time. So thanks for sharing your expertise with us for this last hour and a half.
Can I just interject one more thing that I'm not really sure I said, but I probably should have said. In terms of cortical visual impairment and vision, using vision as a piece, that is a struggle. And I think until you know how great that vision is, while you should explore every avenue of access, that is a really hard one. And when you have a CVI and then lots of motor, yes, that is an incredibly complex child that is probably not going to be able to use his vision or her vision very well. So I think it's worth exploring, and I'm not one to ever say never, but CVI is very complicated. And when you ask a child then to use vision that we don't know when it kicks in or kicks out or what they can see best, I think we set them up sometimes for failure. And yes, switches and step scanning is way more cumbersome and it takes more time, but that doesn't mean it can't be effective. And so I want to make sure that I've said that, just because, yeah, obviously direct select and the use of our eyes would be the two best ways, I think, to go in terms of less equipment.
Right.
It doesn't make it right all the time.
That's helpful, I think, because I think there's a lot of people struggling in that space, but there's hope, there's options, there's things to try. So thank you so much, Amanda. This is incredible. Yeah, and we can't wait to maybe, keep working with you and hearing from you and following up with you. This is amazing. And I just want to quickly share for those on the call that we have a couple of other webinars coming up shortly. We're working on our summer and fall lineup, but we have one coming up next week on growth attenuation therapy, which is a way of ensuring that our kids don't grow to be 6 feet tall and 200 pounds that we have to try to manage when they can't walk or talk. So that's an interesting option. We're going to do a follow-up on COVID. We've had a number of COVID ones talking about vaccines and infections and trying to better understand what's going on with kids with these rare epilepsies who either get the vaccines and or get infected, how they're faring. And then another one talking about brain tissue donation, which is a hard topic, but a really critical one to helping advance the understanding of these rare disorders. So with that, I'm going to say thank you again to Amanda. Thank you again to our partners at CACNA1A for helping put this series together. And we look forward to seeing you all soon. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Gabi.
Bye.